weight of clarity, why your spiritual strength becomes your solitude. There is a particular kind of loneliness that arrives not from weakness, but from becoming too strong in the places others fear to look. You may have felt it. The subtle shift in a room when you enter. The way conversations grow shallow when you arrive. The quiet distance that opens between you and people who once felt close. And you wonder, what changed? But here is what Carl Jung understood that most will never accept. Nothing changed except this. You stopped pretending. You stopped performing the emotional theater that keeps everyone comfortable. You stopped hiding the depth that now lives in your eyes. And the world does not forgive those who refuse to stay asleep. Spiritual strength is not what the culture celebrates. It is not confidence wrapped in charisma. It is not the loud certainty of those who have never questioned themselves. It is something quieter. Something that cannot be captured in words but is felt the moment you walk into a space. It is the energy of someone who has descended into their own darkness and returned changed. Someone who has faced the parts of themselves others spend lifetimes avoiding. Someone who carries truth not as a weapon but as a burden they cannot put down. And that kind of strength terrifies people. Not because it threatens them directly, but because it reminds them of everything they have buried to survive. This is not a message about fixing yourself or becoming more palatable. This is recognition. A mirror held steady so you can finally see that your rejection was never about what you lacked. It was always about what you carried that others could not bear to witness. The first truth, your presence disturbs what others keep hidden. You do not have to speak to unsettle someone. You do not have to challenge or confront. Your mere existence in a space begins to shift things that were meant to stay still. Jung called this the activation of the unconscious. When someone who has integrated their shadow, who has made peace with their hidden parts, stands near someone who has not, something stirs. The repressed begins to rise. The denied begins to knock. And the person experiencing this does not consciously understand what is happening. They only know that being around you feels uncomfortable in a way they cannot name. You have probably noticed it. The person who becomes suddenly critical of you for no clear reason. The friend who grows distant after you share something vulnerable. The family member who accuses you of thinking you are better than everyone else, when all you did was stop pretending to be less. This is not about you doing something wrong. This is about your energy doing what integrated energy does. It reveals what has been hidden. When you have walked through your own fire and emerged still breathing, you carry a frequency, a vibration that says, it is possible to face what you fear and survive. It is possible to look at your darkness and not be destroyed by it. But for those who have built entire lives on the strategy of avoidance, your presence becomes a threat. Because if you can face your shadow and live, then what excuse do they have for continuing to run from theirs? The rejection you experience is often not personal. It is protective. They are protecting themselves from the truth your existence makes unavoidable. The second truth, you no longer play the game everyone depends on. From the moment you were born, you were handed a script. Be agreeable. Be useful. Be whatever keeps the system running smoothly. Smile when you are angry. Agree when you disagree. Perform gratitude even when you feel empty. And for a time you did this. You played the role. You wore the mask Jung called the persona, the acceptable face you show the world so you can belong. But then something happened. Maybe gradually, maybe all at once. The mask began to suffocate you. The role began to feel like a cage. And you made a choice that changed everything. You took it off, not in rebellion, not in anger, but in exhaustion. In the quiet realization that you could no longer sustain the performance without losing yourself entirely. And the moment you stopped playing, people noticed. Not because you became difficult, but because you stopped being predictable. You stopped filling the space they assigned you. You stopped being the role they needed you to play to maintain their own illusions. This is when rejection often becomes most pronounced, because relationships built on roles cannot survive authenticity. When you stop performing, those who were attached to your performance have nothing left to hold on to. You did not fail them. You simply stopped being false. And in a world that runs on mutual pretense, authenticity is often experienced as betrayal. The spiritually strong cannot live in borrowed identities. Their soul rebels against it. And while this rebellion may cost them connection, it returns something infinitely more valuable: the ability to stand in their own truth without apology. The third truth: you feel what others refuse to acknowledge. There is a kind of knowing that does not come from thinking. It comes from sensing, from feeling the undercurrents beneath what is being said, from detecting the emotional weather in a room before anyone speaks a word. Jung understood this as the function of intuition, the ability to perceive what lies beneath the surface. But this gift, like all gifts of spiritual depth, comes with a price. You cannot turn it off. You feel the grief someone is hiding behind their smile. You sense the rage beneath someone's politeness. You know when a relationship is dying even when both people are still trying to perform life into it. And because you feel these things, you cannot participate in the collective agreement to pretend they do not exist. This makes you exhausting to be around for those who depend on denial, because your presence keeps gesturing toward what they are trying so hard not to see. You have probably been told you overthink, that you read too much into things, that you should just relax and stop being so serious. But you cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unfeel what registers in your body as truth. And the more you honor what you perceive, the more alienated you become from those who survive by remaining numb. This is one of the loneliest aspects of spiritual strength, to walk through a world where everyone is pretending, and you are the only one who cannot sustain the pretense. But your sensitivity is not a flaw. It is a form of clarity. And clarity, though isolating, is infinitely more honest than the comfort of collective blindness. The fourth truth: your love requires presence, and most only know how to love from a distance. When you connect with someone, it is never surface. You do not know how to love lightly. You do not know how to care in a way that asks for nothing in return. Your love is presence. Full, undivided, undefended presence. And in a world where most people have learned to love conditionally, strategically, self-protectively, your way of loving feels dangerous. Because to receive your love, someone must be willing to be seen. Actually seen. Not the version of themselves they present, but the unedited reality of who they are when no one is performing. And not everyone can tolerate being seen that deeply. Jung spoke of the self as the totality of who we are, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, the parts we show and the parts we hide. To love from the self, as spiritually strong people do, is to love the whole of another person. Not just their strengths, but their wounds. Not just their light, but their darkness. But people who have not yet met themselves cannot meet you where you live. They cannot drop into the depth you inhabit naturally. They mistake your presence for intensity, your honesty for harshness, your willingness to feel everything for emotional instability. So they pull back. They call you too much. They accuse you of demanding things they never agreed to give. When in truth, all you did was love the way a whole person loves, completely. The rejection that follows this kind of love is not a reflection of its inadequacy. It is a reflection of how rare it has become. How few people have been loved this way. How fewer still know how to receive it. Your love is not too much. It simply originates from a place most have never accessed in themselves. The fifth truth: you do not need their approval, and that feels like abandonment. There was a time when you cared deeply what others thought, when their acceptance determined your worth, when you shaped yourself to fit their expectations because rejection felt like death. But something shifted. Through suffering, through solitude, through the long journey into yourself, you found something the world cannot give and cannot take away. You found your own ground. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, separate from the collective, separate from the roles imposed upon you. And once this process begins, the need for external validation begins to fall away. Not because you become arrogant or indifferent, but because you have touched something inside yourself that is more real than anyone's opinion. And this quiet self-possession unsettles people, because most of the world still operates on a system of approval and rejection. They give love to get compliance. They withhold approval to maintain control. But when you no longer need their approval, they lose leverage. They cannot manipulate you with praise. They cannot shame you into conformity. And that loss of power feels, to them, like you have withdrawn your love. But you have not withdrawn. You have simply stopped performing for validation. You have stopped contorting yourself to earn what should have been freely given. This is spiritual maturity. and it is often mistaken for coldness by those who have not yet found their own center. Let them misunderstand. Let them call you distant or difficult, because the freedom that comes from not needing their approval is worth every moment of their discomfort. The sixth truth: your energy calls forth what people are not ready to face. There is something in you that acts as a catalyst, not by intention, not through effort, but simply by being who you are. Your presence does not allow things to remain dormant. It stirs, it activates, it brings to the surface whatever has been pushed down, whatever has been avoided, whatever someone has spent years trying to keep buried. Jung explored this through the archetype of the wounded healer, the one whose own descent into suffering creates a capacity to hold space for others' pain. But there is a shadow side to this gift that no one speaks about. Not everyone who comes into your orbit wants healing. Some want comfort without transformation. Others want your light without facing what it illuminates in them. You have likely experienced this pattern. Someone draws close to you, magnetized by your depth. They feel safe in your presence. They open in ways they have not opened before. And then, suddenly, they disappear. No explanation, no closure, just distance where intimacy once lived. This is not rejection of you. This is retreat from what your presence awakened in them. Because healing, even when gentle, is destabilizing. It brings the unconscious to consciousness. It forces someone to see what they have been avoiding. And that seeing can be more terrifying than the original wound. Your energy does not just soothe, it reveals. And revelation requires readiness. Some people approach you hoping you will make them feel better without asking them to change. They want the warmth of your presence without the mirror it creates. And when they realize that being near you means confronting themselves, they choose to leave rather than transform. This is not your failure. This is the nature of spiritual work. It is disruptive. It demands honesty. And honesty is something most people can only tolerate in small doses. You cannot control who is ready and who is not. You can only remain true to what you carry. And trust that those who are meant to be transformed by your presence will stay, even when the process is uncomfortable. The seventh truth: you chose reality over illusion, and that choice exiled you. There was a moment, perhaps you remember it, perhaps it happened too quietly to mark, when you stopped agreeing with the lies everyone else was telling. You stopped pretending that everything was fine when it was not. You stopped laughing at things that were not funny. You stopped participating in conversations designed to avoid what actually mattered. You chose truth, not as a moral stance, not as a superiority, but as a necessity, because continuing to live in illusion was costing you your soul. And that choice changed everything. Jung believed that the confrontation with reality is the central task of psychological maturity. He said that most people will do anything, construct elaborate defenses, create endless distractions, build entire lives on false foundations, to avoid facing the truth of their existence. But when you stop avoiding, when you turn toward reality instead of away from it, you step outside the collective agreement. You become someone who can no longer be counted on to maintain the illusions that keep everyone comfortable. And this makes you dangerous, not because you attack those illusions, but because your very existence proves they are optional. You have been excluded for this, shut out of conversations, left out of gatherings, labeled as negative, cynical, or pessimistic when all you did was stop pretending. But here is what they do not understand. Truth does not make you negative. It makes you grounded. It makes you capable of building a life on something solid rather than the shifting sand of collective fantasy. You will be called difficult for refusing to play along. You will be accused of ruining the mood for speaking honestly. You will be told you think too deeply, feel too much, see too clearly. Let them say it, because the cost of returning to illusion is higher than the cost of standing alone in truth. You did not choose isolation. You chose integrity. And integrity in a world built on pretense will always feel lonely. But it is the only kind of loneliness that does not hollow you out from the inside. The recognition. If you have made it this far, if these words have touched something you have carried in silence, then you already know what I am about to say. You were never rejected because you were broken. You were rejected because you stopped breaking yourself to fit into spaces that were too small for your soul. You were not cast out because you were weak. You were cast out because your strength reminded others of their own unused power, and that reminder was unbearable. You were not abandoned because you failed to love enough. You were abandoned because you loved from a depth most people have never accessed, and that depth asked for something they were not ready to give. Carl Jung understood what few are willing to accept. The journey toward wholeness is a solitary one. Not because connection is impossible, but because most people will choose comfort over truth, illusion over reality, the mask over the face beneath it. And when you remove your mask, when you stand in your full, undefended truth, you will not be celebrated by everyone. You will be celebrated by the few who recognize themselves in your refusal to hide. This does not mean you are superior. It means you are awake in a world that rewards sleep. It means you carry light in places that depend on darkness to function. And that light, quiet, steady, undemanding, will always make some people uncomfortable, because it asks nothing of them except honesty. And honesty is the one thing most people have spent their entire lives learning to avoid. What you must remember, the rejection you have experienced is not the end of your story. It is the sorting. The clearing away of connections built on performance so that connections built on presence can finally arrive. You have not lost anything real by being yourself. You have only released what was never meant to last. The people who belong in your life, the ones whose souls recognize yours, will not ask you to dim your light. They will not require you to perform. They will not punish you for your depth. They will meet you in it. They will match you in it. And when you find them, you will understand why all the others had to fall away. Jung spoke of the privilege of becoming who you truly are, but he also acknowledged the cost, the loneliness, the misunderstanding, the seasons of isolation that come with refusing to abandon yourself for the comfort of belonging. You have lived through those seasons. You have walked through rooms where your presence was unwelcome. You have watched people choose illusion over you, comfort over connection, the familiar over the real. And still you remained. You did not shrink. You did not perform. You did not sacrifice your truth to ease someone else's discomfort. That is spiritual strength. Not the absence of pain, but the refusal to betray yourself to escape it. The path forward. There is no fixing this. No strategy to make yourself more acceptable. No technique to soften your presence so others can tolerate it without confronting themselves. This is not about changing who you are. This is about accepting what you are, a mirror, a catalyst, a presence that reveals rather than conceals. And accepting this means accepting the solitude that sometimes comes with it, not as punishment but as part of the path. Because the deeper you go into yourself, the fewer people can follow. Not because they do not care, but because they have not yet made the descent. They are still living on the surface and you are speaking from the depths. One day they may join you, or they may not. But you cannot wait at the threshold forever, hoping they will catch up. Your path moves forward into greater truth, greater depth, greater integration. And those who are meant to walk with you will find you there. In the silence, in the honesty, in the refusal to perform what is no longer real. Jung believed that the soul knows its own direction. And when you honor that direction, even when it leads you away from everyone you once knew, you are not lost. You are found. If these words have met you where you are, if something here has named what you have been carrying without language, leave a simple phrase below. I walk in truth. Let it be a signal to others who feel the same exile. Let it echo through the silence so they know they are not alone in their depth. And if you want to continue exploring what Jung understood about the soul's lonely path, about the psychology of those who see what others refuse to acknowledge, stay with me. Because this conversation, about spiritual strength, about the cost of authenticity, about living from your depths in a world that rewards the shallow, this is the work that matters. You were not made to be understood by everyone. You were made to be true. And truth, though it walks alone more often than we wish, is the only companion that never abandons you. Your rejection was not a verdict. It was a liberation.